Hey everyone, and thanks for joining us for this little video that I wanted to put together to talk a little bit about different yarn weights. So this is something that I wanted to share with you guys. It's something that I learned along the way. I learned crochet when I was a little girl, and my mom taught me how to crochet on my little fingers with regular old worsted weight yarn, and I never understood the stitches, and I never understood all the numbers, and it can be really confusing sometimes when you're looking at a pattern or you're looking at making something and you don't know where to start. So today we're going to take a quick look at what it means to understand the different yarn weights and what those numbers mean when you look at the back of the yarn. So stay with us. When you visit your local yarn store, and most of us, let's be real, we go to like Walmart, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Joann's. We go to the more affordable options sometimes to get started on our crochet or knitting journey. And when you're there, you're faced with so many different types of yarn that you may not know where to start. So today, let's take a look at what all of these sizes are and what are the types of things that you can make with each size weight. So you'll notice on the back of many of the yarn packaging that there are numbers along with care instructions. So the numbers can range from 1 to 6, and I don't think it goes over 6, but we'll talk about what those numbers mean. And those numbers refer to the weight. On the back of your yarn package, you'll also find instructions on gauge and what size needle that they recommend that you use. Now, when it comes to the gauge and it comes to the type of needle that they recommend, when you're starting out, you don't necessarily have to pay attention to that. I'm one of those people that believe in, hey, if I can just learn how to do the stitch, then I'm doing okay. So if it works better for you to use a larger hook, then go ahead and do that until you get used to performing your stitches. But let's talk a little bit more about what do those numbers mean. So the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that you'll see in the black box on the back of your yarn represent the weight. And it more importantly represents the number of strands that are twisted together to form that yarn. So for example, you have on a 1, that's thread, right? So it's one piece of yarn, one piece of thread that is just twisted fine, and it usually looks something like this, where it's really fine and really small. A lot of size 1s are used for things that are delicate, like the little snowflakes you see, thread crochet. Sometimes people make the chair backs or the seat covers, or you can make a beautiful scarf or shawl out of size 1 thread. It's very difficult to work with because it is so fine, but the results are really gorgeous. Most of the time when you use this size thread, you have to use a needle, and I'm speaking in terms of crochet, that's really tiny. They usually come in silver, and maybe I'll do a video on what the different size needles look like and what types of projects you use for each one. But for size 1, you would use the tiny needles, and you can make things like snowflakes and snow angels and things like that. I've made some of those things. It's a lot of fun, but it is challenging, and make sure that you have your eyeglasses on because the stitches are small, because the thread is small, and the needle is small. Size 2. Size 2 is a sport weight. And this is size 2, and remember I mentioned that the number represents the number of threads that are twisted around one another to form the yarn. So in this case, it's still kind of fine, it's still kind of thin, but it has more of a chunky appearance, and it also has a lot to do with what this is made of. And so this is great. This is considered a sport weight. And again, you can make things like sweaters, you can make shawls, things of that nature out of this size 2. Size 3, this is a size 3, and this one is great. This is used a lot by knitters for socks. Size 3 is a little bit thicker. Again, we're using 3 strands to kind of go around one another, and I believe this one is also a size 3, and you'll notice They seem different, right? But they are exactly the same weight, right? So you could do baby blankets from this, you can do socks, you can do a variety of projects. Even a size 2, I would even venture to say you could make socks because it's so thin, it won't come out super heavy. So you have your 2, your 3, which are not very dissimilar, right? But again, it's just that extra thread that's wrapped around. Let's take a look at a 4, which is the most common type that you'll find in your local craft shop. So this is a 4. This is worsted weight, and worsted weight is really the most popular size to work with. This is what I would recommend for anyone who's starting out in crochet. It's not too thick, it's not too thin. You can use a regular medium-sized needle like an H or a G hook and really get some decent results, learn your stitches, and be able to see those stitches without it being too small or too fine or getting your stitches too tight. So worsted weight is usually when you see like Red Heart or Lion Brand, you see a lot of worsted weight in like your Walmarts or your just about anywhere you can find yarn, you'll find a worsted weight. Worsted weight is a size 4. So whenever you hear someone talk about worsted, that's size 4, that's 4 strands wrapped around one another to form the yarn, okay? Now when you get into your chunkies, remember it's the number of threads that are wrapped around one another. So we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4 is worsted, now you have chunky. Chunky is exactly what it sounds like. It is chunky, which means that you have 5 threads that are wrapped around one another, and when it works up, you get these nice full stitches, very, very chunky. This, again, a size 5 would be good also for beginner because, again, those stitches would be nice and big, and you'll be able to see your stitches. So as you're learning what a crochet stitch looks like to go back and forth, you'll be able to identify them fairly easily. Chunky is great for scarves, it's great for sweaters, hats for the winter. Chunky is a lot of fun. You can find chunky in a variety of types as well. Sometimes they have it mixed where you have a thin mixed in with a chunky, or you can match this with some of those fringe yarns that you see around. Just kind of line them up together and crochet them together so that you kind of get that full and fluffy at the same time. Chunky is a lot of fun to work with. It's very thick, but it just depends on what you're working on, right, as to whether or not chunky is the right choice for you. So for size 6, you now have your super bulky, which many of you have seen probably at your local craft store. More specifically, I know this particular brand is sold at Walmart, and this is great for finger crochet. It's a size 6. It's called super bulky, and so there are different variations. There's super chunky and then there's super bulky, and it just depends on what it's made out of as to how thick or how much it works up. But this particular size works great for finger crochet or hand knitted blankets or arm crochet or arm knit. And this is a lot of fun when you're making your finger crochet scarves, hats, blankets, and all of that good stuff. I hope this helps. I hope that answers some of your questions, and next time we'll talk a little bit about crochet hooks and the sizes and what kinds of projects you can make with those. Thanks for joining, and I can't wait to see what you create.